Welcome to Centaur Financial Services Podcast. The information provided on and made available through this video and podcast does not constitute as financial product advice. The information is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice. We recommend that you obtain your own independent professional advice before making any decision in relation to your particular requirements or circumstances.
Hey everyone, welcome to 2024. It's a new year. We hope that you guys survived the storms over the Chrissy break and that you did get some time to rest and relax and enjoy despite that. We're pretty positive on 2024. We're never sure what the market's going to give us, but what we do know is we're going to work really hard to figure out what the best moves are for portfolios. So with that, I've got Bobby and Nick here this morning. We're going to get straight into it and we're going to reflect quickly on last year, what a crazy year that was, what crazy last 2 years we've had, and then quickly we're going to not predict or forecast what's going to happen in 2024 because the crystal ball's broken, but we're going to have a quick discussion about the things that are going to come in that are getting our interest or our attention now that we're just really watching and how we're going to position portfolios around that. So, hello.
G'day.
Welcome back. Good. Let's quickly get into last year. So Aussie share market did 12.4%, but in the last quarter, it did 8.4%. So for the rest of the year, didn't really do a lot.
Yeah.
Globally, we had the world market did 23.6, and in the last quarter, 5.5. So had a pretty good first 3 quarters of the year. Fixed interest, our global bonds did 5.3, and pretty much all of that came in the last quarter. 5.1 for Aussie bonds, 3.8 came out in the last quarter. And we know now that our bank bill rate went from 3.3 for the year, but 4.1 in the last quarter. So quickly run us through last year. The 1 year numbers look great, but when I read the quarterly numbers, what did the other 3 quarters do? What happened last year?
Yeah.
Look at if you asked me in October, I would have said it's been a shocking year for Australia. But, last year it buoyed. The market basically buoyed the whole time. We were sitting in that negative territory from an Australian perspective. Rates, inflation really ran the narrative for the most part of the year. And it wasn't really until, from an Australian perspective, that October, November, December rally that we had is where things started to pick up. So if you were chasing returns throughout the year and you started with bonds and then moved to Australia, then moved to international, you wouldn't have made much money at all. They all sort of came in at different times, and I guess the label on the end of the year that was is a lot more positive than what it really felt like.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we're sitting here, October, mid-year, whatever through the year and thinking, geez, what a great year it's been. It was tough, lots of ups and downs, different catalysts, a lot of the macro really pushing the markets to and fro, but the last 2 months just came back. But keep in mind, that was from a 10% correction through September, October, the share market in particular. So, yeah, bumpy year, but the numbers on the page were amazing. But, it was definitely mixed based on those kind of macro factors.
And before when we were talking, you said probably the reason when it started to go up was that there was indication from central banks globally that interest rates have probably peaked.
Yep.
So we're looking at that, October, they've said, okay, look, they're probably about at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So straight away the market interpreted that as, well, hey, now they're going to go down, giddy up. Might not be the case this year. It might mean that I suppose the discussion in the market right now is, are they going to stay higher for longer or are they going to go down? And that's probably the big debate around interest rates right now in central bank policy. I suppose too, at the start of last year, just wanting to touch on that, kind of out of nowhere we had the Silicon Valley Bank and 3 of the biggest bank collapses in US history happened. Credit Suisse went out of business, got taken over by UBS. So it wasn't really looking like a good year, and despite we still got some really good outcomes. So, I think it was led by the Magnificent Seven. The numbers there are, just those 7 companies themselves did 75%. So crazy returns, stuff that we would not expect For 2024, that's not normal, but I suppose when we look at maybe last year and the year before that, and the year before that with COVID, probably haven't been normal times. So hopefully, with interest rates where they are right now, we're getting to something that's more of a normal investing environment where people will get rewarded for holding bonds, and hopefully that bonds will give us a good diversifier of share markets. So how would that work now with clients with bonds versus shares for 24?
So I suppose through 22 in particular, we lost that kind of diversification benefit in a way where bonds offset shares when they go up and down, they kind of negatively correlated. So now, if we get to a place where interest rates have kind of peaked or thereabouts, we've got 5% income enough from the bonds at the moment, irrespective of what happens to the capital. And then obviously, if interest rates go down because the economy starts to weaken, which might drag shares down, bonds should prop that up. So historically, I think average interest rates are around the 5% mark. Mm-hmm. So we can get back to that. True principles working in the investment market, shares and bonds working really well together in the portfolio. So looking forward, much more confident with how things are at the moment, and there's certainty coming back in.
Okay, so for our clients out there, if we see that interest rates go down this year, say like the end of this year, interest rates, or say mid this year, interest rates are going to start to go down, let's say. So that's going to be to stimulate the economy to some extent, which probably means that companies are going to earn a little bit less money. But when the interest rates go down, our bonds actually go up in value. So that's when we're talking about the diversification benefit, is bonds, not only do you get the income, the coupon, but your actual capital value of that will go up if the current interest rates go down. So that's probably something we harp on a little bit every time we're talking. We just really want clients to understand that diversification benefit and how you can actually get capital returns on your bonds that really haven't been there for the last 10, 15 years. So it's quite a different environment to what we've had. Let's go on to, okay, so we've got 7 elections. Where are they?
Well, we know US. We've got US, 5th of November,
yes.
Down there.
Spot on.
Russia, most likely, which will be a nail-biter. Let's see where that comes from. India, I believe, as well.
Yes.
Who else? UK?
Yes.
What's that? That's 4.
Very well.
Who's got the last 3? Indonesia?
Indonesia, yes. Taiwan. And South Africa.
Great.
So, so it's going to be interesting. Really, the only one that probably is of real consequence is going to be US, and that'll be the 5th of November, as Nick correctly pointed out.
Yeah.
So, too soon to call markets on what's going to happen. Is it going to be a Republican? Is it going to be Democrat? But what we know is traditionally, share markets have positive years in election years. Usually because there's lots of promises, there's more government spending. Government spending is a key component of GDP. It can keep economies moving pretty solidly. So watch this space. We're just flagging that now. Again, that's something that's in our periphery that we're going to be watching out for and seeing, but you can kind of ignore the noise up until that point in the market. Something that I wanted to touch on is earnings yields. Let's just say that the yield on investment grade credit, the S&P 500 and cash is all around the same right now. So because the share market went up so high, the yield's actually around the same as cash, and investment grade credit is about the same. So if I'm a client out there right now, why do I not just take cash? Why don't I just put my money in cash?
Yeah, okay. Okay. So a lot of people have actually asked that, and it comes up every day. Why not just be in cash when it's yielding 4 or 5%? Valid question, right? Essentially, cash is great in the short term. It's safe. It feels nice because there's no volatility at your income. However, we don't invest for a week, a month, a year. We invest for the long term. Most people, 10, 20 years. So over that period, we know cash does underperform. And, if we're saying interest rates are going to come down as well towards the end of the year, I'm not calling that just right.
Okay.
If we're saying that, then that yield on cash is also going to get worse, and we have reinvestment risk for the time we get back in the market. So look, sticking to fundamentals, we know averages, what shares do, what bonds do, what cash does, and a mix of those is generally the best, rather than just being all in cash. Yes, you have to ride the bumps, but if you're in cash in October, which would have been fully understandable, you just missed 10% at the end of the year. So that's why we would go 100% cash.
Okay. And when I look at the 10-year numbers, so taking out your time frame as an example, the Australian share market 7.9% over 10 years.
Yep.
The world index was 12.2% over 10 years, and cash was 2.6%. So, okay, so the diversification principle still works. And I think also if you're in cash and shares, you don't get that bump of fixed interest. The government bonds, corporate bonds, which can actually go up in value.
Yes.
Your cash isn't going to go up in value. You're just going to get that rate of return. And the reinvestment risk is true. The rates do go down. Not that we're saying that they will, but if they do go down, then you're reinvesting at a lower rate. And it makes it really hard if I'm a retiree figuring out how much I'm going to live off, because you've got to draw down 4 or 5% of your money every year. And if I'm not going to earn, if I'm earning 4% or 4.5%, I've got to draw down 5%. I'm just depleting my capital base over time. And that hasn't even factored in the cost of inflation, everything going up, which again, the share market helps us overcome the inflation hurdle that's there. Okay, so what are the things that can go wrong right now? I've got a list.
You got a list?
I've got a list of things that can go
That's
wrong. So tell me your thoughts. Rates stay too high for too long, which puts the squeeze on households. We all see, a lot of our clients here, they'll have, their kids with mortgages, and they're going to feel the I'm not even going to say pinch, they're going to feel the punch of that. That's definitely going to be an issue. That means they can't spend as much. For the retirees, it can work out okay because they're going to get higher cash. But also for business, it's going to be really hard for business who, a lot of businesses have finance. So it just makes it really difficult for them to operate. As well, if people have less money, they're not spending it on businesses. So governments, I think that is really the tightrope that all governments and central banks are going to walk over the next 12 months, is how they keep the inflation low or not out of control, but at the same time start to stimulate the economy and make sure that small business in particular, households in particular, aren't going to struggle. With the 7 elections that we've got this year, that's probably going to be pretty favourable for all those potential voters.
I suppose on that as well, that kind of extends into the risk of recession this year, would be probably one of my main ones. Can the governments of the world and the reserve banks of the world engineer that soft landing that we've been talking about? I think that was part of what kicked the markets towards the end of the year, is thinking that might be the case. If we keep interest rates too high for too long, potential recession, everything kind of slows down, which we don't want. So do we have a recession? Do we not have a recession? I think that's one of the big risks.
So Jerome Powell, the central bank governor, Federal Reserve governor, he's been jawboning saying that, inflation is their number one target and they will do whatever it takes. So is he going to be able to eat the humble pie and say, okay, now that's under control? We had just in this morning, the inflation number for November. So again, this stuff is old data. So we're acting off, the Reserve Bank is going to act off data, at their next meeting off November data. But it came out at 4.3 versus the October one, 4.9. So inflation definitely trending down in the right direction. So we've talked about, and that's a good thing. So it seems like it's getting where governments and we all want it to be. And again, great for our clients because the cost of everything's going to not go up as accelerated. So inflation seems under control. Interest rates staying where they are, probably not going up. Maybe, I know there's been talk maybe one more rise, especially for Australia. I think that's got a probability of 3% now. It goes up one more time.
I suppose that could be another risk as well if you think about with inflation not being under control. So central banks overdo it or underdo it, rather. Inflation comes up again and there's now a second rate hike cycle. Which would be very detrimental to us.
So we'd rather it staying a little bit higher now rather than going
down and up.
So they went probably too late last time in the interest rates going up, and it meant they had to go pretty aggressively, whereas like New Zealand and other countries went way earlier and got even higher. So, okay, what about then unemployment? So that's that third variable in macroeconomics. What's going to happen there? What do we want to happen? What's it looking like?
Crystal ball stuff. With that unemployment, obviously it's been 2023 record lows for a while, which obviously stimulates the economy more because more people are working, spending more because they've got more income, those kind of things. Realistically now, if the economy starts to slow, it should start to ease a bit, putting less pressure on inflation as well. But again, crystal ball stuff. watch that one.
And I suppose overseas immigration.
Yeah,
Impacts that. So that'll be interesting. So what could go wrong? The geopolitical risks continuing. We weren't. Last year I suppose we were still focused a little bit on Russia, Ukraine. We don't really do much of that anymore. We were talking about US, China, but now we've seen that they're starting to have a lot of dialogue and trying to sort of build some relationships there, which is good. We've talked about lower earnings, possibly companies earning less. So they're the things we've really got to be watching out for. Lessons from last year, I feel, is don't predict the future. So, we've got to be very careful of, if we had allocated clients' money last year based off what all the forecasters said, we would have gone into Asia, which was a horrible investment. We would have stayed out of America, which was an amazing investment. We would have said that, Australia would have been probably positive because China was going to do their stimulus, which, Australia was okay, but only in the last quarter. So really it's about sticking to those principles for us and making sure we're always going to diversify client portfolios, making sure we're meeting with the managers who are out there in the marketplace, the best investment strategies that we can find and say, okay, how will that fit our clients and our client portfolios? I've got here when the facts change our views. Don't stick to the same, knitting on interest rates because interest rates aren't 2%. They're going to be 5%, and whether they're 4 or 6%, we know that it's fundamentally different to what it was. And we've even started changing our portfolios that way, which, it used to be if they were going to get a 10% return, it was going to be 8% capital growth, 2% income. Now we're seeing that as close to 5% growth. So less growth, but better income, 5% income. Sticking to the long-term principles, I think, this is something we harp on about a lot with our own internal investment committee and stuff that we're talking to clients about, and controlling your own behaviours, controlling your own, feelings when you're watching the market go down. If you had to watch it till October last year, you would have felt like getting out and you would have missed that last 2 months. We looked at a balanced investor that came in October last year, they were up 6%. So they think the share market's amazing right now because they've come in and how great, in 2 months they've made 6%. If you times that if you annualise that number, that's what, 36% return for the year. Not going to happen, but the client that got in, 2 months before that is not enjoying the share market. So we've got to not get tricked by this short-term game. We said something to Amaya the other day about, don't measure. Why does everyone measure their portfolio 1 year? What's a 1 year measure? A 1 year measure is the time it takes the Earth to circle the sun. So to create that is your metric for measuring investment performance of how Meta or Coca-Cola or Commonwealth Bank is going to earn its money is a little bit silly. So we've got to give it long term, and what we've got to really focus on is that the portfolios are going to hit your goals, not the time it takes the Earth to circle the sun. Big principles for me out of last year, again, was to stay diversified, have patience, which is sometimes the hardest thing in the world to have. We all want the results straight away in everything in life, but we know if we do the simple things really well, we will, it's almost like the Goldilocks approach. We will get there. And for us as your advisors to control the discipline. Now, I think the investment piece is very important, but it's almost secondary to the strategies and understanding what our clients want to achieve and making sure we position your portfolios like that. Closing words, comments by you gentlemen?
To wrap up 2023, look, obviously really mixed year. The total numbers look great, but obviously comes with its challenges. I think the best lesson from last year is to stick to the fundamentals, diversification, and just riding that roller coaster because obviously, as you can see, things happen quickly. So we don't want to get out and miss a couple of good days, which could change the 5-year view.
Yeah, it's the same tone. We forget things very quickly as well, right? So we're now in this bubble currently, positive markets, inflation going down, very happy. But that's not always going to be the case over the year. It wasn't for the majority of last year. So I think, like you said, back to fundamentals, well-diversified portfolio, don't get tricked into shiny things.
So we're not going into Bitcoin, which is having a resurgence?
Not into Bitcoin, not all into different materials.
Magnificent Seven.
I think there's an argument for an allocation to it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just 100%.
Yeah.
Diversification.
Diversification wins the day. Okay, I think that's pretty good. If you have any questions, please always shoot them through to us. We're always here. We're always really interested in what's going on in our clients' minds, and we always appreciate the time you take to write to us and give us your feedback on these podcasts, because we want to make them all about you and the best we can do for you. So with that, thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.